The 2025 International DIR Floortime Conference, live online October 19th to 28th, a unique 10-day conference with dozens of engaging presentations on the practical application of DIR Floortime for professionals and parents alike. Early bird discount if you register by October 1st for 20% off. DIR Parent Network members get 25% off. On Tuesday, October 28th, Dr. Robert Nassif and I will be presenting The Good or Bad, Hard to Say Parable, Navigating the Complexities of Autistic Support Needs. Hope to see you there. Affect Autism, 10 years of providing free supportive content for your DIR journey.
All of Affect Autism's podcasts are produced and edited by Daria Brown. Please note that the views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved, do not constitute educational or medical advice, and do not necessarily reflect the views of Affect Autism, Daria Brown, nor ICDL and associated parties. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with their individual circumstances for specific support.
You're listening to the We Chose Play podcast from Affect Autism, where Affect is the #1 tool we use in supporting development through playful interactions. This episode, I'm airing a year-old presentation made by the late, great DIR Floortime Expert Training Leader and phenomenal educator, Kasheena Holder. I hope you will enjoy the tips she provided our DIR Parent Network with regarding bridging the gap between home and school. For those who knew Kasheena, this will be a wonderful reminder of her warmth, wisdom, and dedication to families. And for those hearing her for the first time, it's a chance to be inspired by the passion and insight she so generously shared. DIR Expert Training Leader Kasheena Holder is going to share with us all kinds of wisdom about how to bridge the gap between your school and home, because this is such a common question we get. So take it away, Kasheena.
All right, I'll take it away. Hi, Daria. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be with you. As Daria said, I hope I'm able to share some of my wisdom. I'm hopeful that I'm able to connect with what I assume are many questions that parents have regarding that bridging gap between school and home. I share from my experience as well as a teacher and how intentional I am in bridging the gap between school and my classroom and home and parents, because I really think it's a vital part of being a teacher and educator, and more so a teacher that includes a relationship-based model, which is DIR and floor time. So let's get going. So what we'll explore is we're going to just throw out some questions. They're parent-inspired questions. Then we're going to go through how can we connect with the school, how can we connect with the teacher in just some practical ways. And sometimes it's the simple practical things that really can make the difference when connecting between school and home, and that can reduce some of our stresses as parents and as teachers as well. And then I'm hoping to just share with you another perspective of bridging that gap between school and home, and that is creating our 3 R's. In education in my country, we have a slogan slash saying where our 3 R's stands for reading, writing, and arithmetic. But as a DIR floor time practitioner, I've revamped that. But what it means is rejuvenate, regulate, connect, and refocus our intent. And when I think of this, I think of as we are bridging from school to home, some of the things that we as the 4 R's, some of the things that we can do to really help make that connection and transition from school physically with our kiddos to home due to some of the stresses and overwhelm experiences that they may be happening for them. So let's go. So questions. So parent-inspired questions, and you can Let me know through the chat or when we go into a bit of conversation or just by a simple emoji, if any of these questions resonate with you. And sometimes we might hear parents say, or you may think, feel, or share with another person. Any of these questions, all of these questions may be coming to mind. The school wouldn't listen to me. What do I do? School thinks my child is behaving inappropriately and poses and punishes them in ways that can be belittling or even ways that can be non-supportive of their developmental levels. School has a lots of neurotypical goals, but my child is neurodivergent. And we can think about that in a lot of different aspects when we're in the classrooms. If our children have Sue said it's not question, they're facts. Thank you, Sue. And we think of IEPs as well when we come across that concept of goal setting. We can always be thinking about school having expectations of my child conforming rather than other kids learning about my child and including them. And this question or fact really sits strongly with me because as a teacher, I'm always actively thinking of how I can educate myself and my kids in general in how to support all human beings, how to be understanding of all human beings. Because I think that is such a wonderful experience to have that exposure, to have that knowledge, to have that awareness of how we are all similar and different, and how do we adapt and support the differences and similarities of our classmates. And I believe that's something that we can start to do from very, very early, because a lot of times I'm working with 3, 4, 5-year-olds, and it's really how is the school and teacher being intentional in supporting this. And we'll go through it a bit more in some of the things we're going to look for or consider when we are connecting with our teacher. So we're going to move on to some more questions. So some more parent inspired questions. The school is trying to make my child do X, Y, and Z, but they can't, right? If they're dysregulated, and they're unaware of the FEDCs, and we may be in situations where we are in school settings that do not have knowledge of DIR and floor time or the FEDCs, or even relationship-based models to support our kids. And this can be a point where for parents, we're always thinking about what can we do differently? How can we inspire or support the school in shifting their thinking, shifting their philosophy, and really supporting the needs, the core needs of our child, our children. That question in particular can get really complicated and complex because of the diverse and complex nature of school and schooling systems. But we're hoping that through some of the strategies we share, that we're at least able to support the space that our child is in, like the classroom and the teacher, in becoming more intentional and becoming more aware of what some of those needs are and how can we better support dysregulation and or any type of emotional needs that our kiddos may have. The school says that my child is high functioning. Like, what does that mean? Right? So it doesn't require support. And I see this a lot. And even when I receive IEPs, when I receive reports from even sometimes specialists. And I have to bridge and support that with parents and helping them to understand what can it mean, but also really how do we just focus on what does the child need in that moment? What is the perception of high functioning? And how can that be very misleading, as well as misplaced in terms of the interpretation of that phrasing? We always want to think of, as we're going through these questions, the dynamics of the classroom, the dynamics of the individual child, and the dynamics of the classroom, in terms of what is the classroom's energy and philosophy. Those things we have to keep in mind as well as we're working through a lot of these questions and wonderings and concerns and facts that we have as parents. Teachers are not trained in all of students' needs, and AAC use is one that's prevalent. Sign language and various languages, that's another area that parents can sometimes be concerned about. What do we do? How can we support a teacher? How can a teacher support us as parents in meeting some of these concerns and challenges that we're having? The school is not following the individualized education plan. That is a big one. And I think also, as we wonder about our IEPs, some other questions can come to mind. Are the IEP goals appropriate? Are they developmentally anchored in what the child is requiring from the school? Does the IEP really expand and inculcate all of the child's needs? Does the IEP take into consideration the school and classroom? All of these things we're thinking of as parents when we look at why the school is not following the individualized plan. But we are really exploring some of those broad questions and facts that parents may be experiencing, but we really understand that there are a lot of other nuances to bridging that gap between school and home. And we also recognize that we did not cover all of the possible questions and wonderings that parents have as it relates to school and school environments. But we hope that we're able to at least capture a broad idea, and broad enough that we're meeting some of the things that you're wondering about, all right? So we're going to first think of how can we as parents connect with the school. And like I said, a lot of the things that I'm sharing really tap into my years of experience of being at school, being the owner of an inclusive school as well, and just a lot of parent feedback and what parents found meaningful when we're working together. So in connecting with the school, and I know this is a big one, and I offer it with a lot of compassion and a lot of awareness of what does it mean to build a positive relationship. And that is definitely a two-way process of, as a parent, our intent is to build a positive relationship. And that must be met from the school's willingness to build a positive relationship. And what does positive mean? And what does the relationship look like? And in working towards building a positive relationship, we have to start to learn some of the culture of the school so it can help us to know how to navigate the relationship that we're about to build. Another point that's important about building positive relationship with school is understanding that it's a journey, because we may have teachers, different principals, different managers. All of these things can be varied. That can cause that relationship to be ruptured, or to cause that journey in that relationship to take longer or feel more arduous. But at the core is building positive relationships. Another piece that can be really important and at the same time really difficult to process and to work through is in building those relationships, making an effort not to I would say bring a lot of the stresses from previous relationships into new ones. And that is something as parents that can be really difficult to process and work through in the moment, because we can come into a relationship with a school or a teacher thinking about our prior experiences, thinking about the happenings in a previous relationship that can impact just how we start a relationship. So those are things that, from connecting with parents and from experience, that I think can really help us to bridge that gap. Sometimes we have to really work on starting relationships anew, and starting with as clear or clean a slate as we possibly can. Another thing that I mentioned before is, what is the school's learning culture and philosophy? So knowing that is important, because if we are coming into the school climate and that school's learning culture is one that is behavioral in its approach and its philosophy, if that school's culture is one that is not communicating and liaising well with parents, then it's going to be very difficult to connect with the school. So I think starting a relationship, understanding what is the school's culture, what is the school's philosophy, is going to help you on that journey of connections. And we're looking for schools as much as we can, because we know sometimes it's difficult where we are, what is being offered, what is economically viable. All of these things are coming into this conversation and this process of school selection. But we want as much as possible to find a school culture and philosophy that aligns with our school philosophy as well. We also want to think of, when we think of the culture, is there a philosophy of training? Is there a philosophy of parent involvement and inclusion? That's super important within our demographic. Is there open door policies? And open door policies can be different. It can be our parents actively in the design of activity, in the design of curriculum, in the design of what we will call enrichment activities. Are parents able to come into classes, come into the school's physical compound and interact with children? Other ways of having open door policies are, can parents be present in field trips or fun day activities? So we want to really dig into understanding those philosophical and cultural elements of your school, so you can start to build a profile of how we can connect with each other. We also want to explore, is there room and intentionality for training? So does that school have a culture of training staff? Does that school have a culture of including children in that learning journey of how to work in a diverse classroom experience, right? So that is another thing we're thinking of, building that connection. What does the school need from you? That's so important. What does the school need from you as a parent? And that goes into understanding the school's culture. Does the school require parents to be actively in meetings, actively in workshops? Because sometimes that can really give us an avenue to build relationships outside of the classroom. And fostering those types of relationships can really help us to um, create a platform for sharing, communicating, and connecting. And we're going to go into that a bit more. Learn the culture of parent involvement, and that's tying into a lot of the other points I made before. And I also want to encourage you in terms of connecting with the school to start to feel more comfortable within your IEP meetings. And I know that can be varied from parent to parent, from school to school, but we really want parents to feel as if they're advocates, to feel as if their voice should be heard, and be intentional in that process as part of that connecting with the school. We always also want to investigate and be aware of what does the IEP process look like for that school, and really understand what role are you playing in that IEP design, in that IEP process, because it can be different from school to school in its application, even though laws, rules, and regulations are very clear in terms of what should happen. Right. So here is where I'm saying, if you understand what your laws and regulations in your state and country state as it relates to IEPs, and you're able to align it with what the school is requiring of you, that parent involvement, the culture of parent involvement, then you can position yourself as a stronger advocate for making that connection. Okay, we're connecting with teachers, and I'm just watching the time because I really want to talk to you all and hear you. So I'm going through these slides, but I think the meat of the conversation is what you're going to share in a few minutes, and I hope that's okay. So connecting with the teacher, and I'm a strong believer, and there are arguments for and against this philosophy that I have, that your teacher is the one of the most important people in your school system. There is that big umbrella of the school, but I think the intimacy of a teacher and building the connection with the teacher is super important. And we want to start by building a respectful relationship. We can become really intimate with our teachers because we're seeing them daily. They're really interacting with our children. And that intimacy builds relationship, but we also still want to be mindful of them respecting you as the parent and you respecting them as the teacher. The teacher is your direct connection to your child's daily experience. Cherish it, use it, access it. Tell them, talk to your teacher about your child's needs, right? And your support needs. We want to know, we want to be aware. The next few slides, we'll go through just some simple ways from the teacher's perspective on how a parent can really get into that connection. And as we're going through these, I'm just going to ask you to think about the class as a whole, um, and think about many parents requiring the same thing, right? And I know that can be difficult, that can be arduous, that can be tricky. Because as a parent, I'm thinking about my child's needs first, right? And we respect that as a teacher. I want you to practice gaining an understanding of the classroom culture and dynamics. What does that mean? When is the classroom most regulated classroom culture? Does the classroom have a culture of very strict and formal classroom management? Does the classroom has a culture of more liberal classroom management? Those are important things to help you understand as a parent, how do you connect with your teacher? Does the classroom dynamics give you the impact or the understanding that there is a good classroom to teacher ratio, right? So if we're seeing a ratio of 2 to 1, 1 to 1, 3 kids to 1, that is a good classroom dynamic / ratio. If we're seeing 4 to 1, 6, 8 to 1, that ratio and dynamic and classroom culture starts to become very stressful, right? Understanding that is helpful for you as a parent for the next points. So when we understand the classroom dynamics, we're going to know and better understand how do we send information to the teacher. The teacher wants that information. But sometimes the way it's offered, it can be too much. So then none is taken. So if we understand the classroom dynamics, it's going to help us build a stronger bridge. So then we're thinking of what is the preferred way and time to communicate to that teacher. That teacher wants to know all of the successes, challenges, and insights that you have as a parent. They want to know we didn't have a good night because it's going to impact the classroom's culture and dynamic. They want to know we didn't have our breakfast, or we didn't eat all of our breakfast, or we did really well this morning, at therapy, and we're in a good space. We want to know these things because it truly impacts how we're going to further connect, further support, even in those difficult moments for that child and you as a parent, and also how we're going to further support if the child is coming into the class and school in a regulated space. But if we understand the way to communicate with the teacher, we're going to be able to give them more. So if you've assessed that the dynamics of your classroom, your teacher takes information the night before and really internalize it, that's where we try to give it. If you recognize the teacher takes information the night before via an email, or the teacher takes information very early in the morning via messenger or school messenger, or the teacher takes information a quick what the name just went out of my head, sticky note in the child's bag, quick note, right? That's how the teacher internalizes that information, or through a quick 30-second, 1-minute verbal handover. So knowing that preferred way and time really helps you to build a strong bridge. So you don't feel as if you are taking up too much time, imposing. You don't feel as if you are getting energies from your teacher of like, I do not have time. I'm really busy, mommy, our dad, our parent. I can't talk to you now. And these are realities I'm sure you as parents have experienced. I as a teacher have observed. Even though we want that information, because 30 seconds later, we're like, I wonder why this kiddo is not as settled as they usually are. And we're then problem solving. Maybe you didn't have a good lunch. Maybe you didn't sleep well. And that is information that you have. So we want it, even though sometimes we think we don't want it. So really finding those nuances in building communication helps, right? And it helps you too, because then you leave that experience knowing that you have left valuable information and it meets your regulation as well, right? You feel a greater sense of felt safety for the job you've done in ensuring that your kiddo is in good care. Actively explore simple ways that you can have school to home carry over, and it may be in that same format as a note. It may be really understanding what is happening in the classroom and how it's being done. A lot of times as a teacher supporting parent and bridging that gap, what parents would feedback to me is like, Kasheena, we don't know what's happening in the classroom, or we know what's happening in the classroom because we see snapshots, and as you should, or we have a list of activities, or we have a list of things that are being done, but we're not sure how to do them when we get home. And this is the last point on that slide. That statement meets that. Try to be that should be intentional in learning how the teacher may be teaching a specific learning technique, because that consistency also helps with the carryover. It also helps you to be reinforcing the activity or the particular skill in the way that the teacher is. And that's similar. Sorry. And that's similar for you as a parent. We want to know what you're doing that's working. We want you to share that in that communication style that works for the dynamic. We want you to tell us, hey, Kasheena, when I sing the put your shoe on song this way, my kiddo really gets it. This is the tune, so that we can carry that over. And similarly, that's what we want to do as teachers, and we want you to encourage us to do as teachers. How are you teaching this? How are you supporting this? Show me, tell me, so that I can also follow through with it at home. Other things that we're thinking of actively exploring in terms of that carryover from school to home and home to school, is things like timing, the duration of time that a child might be willing to experience something. We're also thinking of how can we actively support the relationship in a way that we are being consistently kept abreast of what is happening in our classrooms. So you're noticing and you're inquiring on the different ways that you are being kept aware of what activities are being done. How is your kiddo responding to it? And we want to be using, again, those preferred communication mediums, right? Okay, so we're moving on. Okay, so we're coming down. We're going to shift a bit into the 3 R's. And in our question time, we can go back to some of the teacher strategies and connection tools, as well as exploring some of the questions. But here is where I'll shift gears a bit. And I'm thinking about when I say the 3 R's, there is a big chunk of that bridging between school and home that is a physical process of when my kiddo is coming out of school and we are transitioning from school to home. How do I bridge that for them? And very often, our kiddos are in a school and the sensory demand is intense. They're using lots of spoons, lots of cognitive reserves, lots of sensory demands in that space. So when they're transitioning from school to home, they don't have a lot of spoons left, right? They're exhausted, they're groggy, they're just like, I cannot do it again. But when we meet our kiddos, we are eager to explore and wonder about what their day was like. We're oftentimes eager to add more to their day because we want to be with them. So when we think of that bridging, there is something that I encourage. There is something that I encourage parents to consider. Let's try to consider, as soon as our kids come out of school, what their sensory load is. What spoons do they still have? And let's create our 3 R's based on that knowledge, because you know your kids really well. So our 3 R's are, we're going to think about rejuvenating and regulating. We're going to think about reconnecting and then refocusing. So the first thing we're going to keep in our minds is like, there are very little spoons, no spoons. So in those first seconds, moments of meeting our kiddos at school, we're thinking of rejuvenation, regulation, be with versus doing. So we're going to reduce questions and demands. We're going to pull away from the urge of asking or trying to inquire, what happened? What do you do? Oh, those types of questions. We may even have to think about, how can we reduce some of the sensory stimuli that we may be offering their nervous system. You know, if it does your child first thing out of school not feel safe and regulated with tactile input, so may not be the most comfortable getting a hug right away, even though we really want to give them one. May not feel safe, comfortable carrying their load, maybe their backpack, holding something in their hand. So we're thinking of those things as reduction of demands. And we're really framing an energy and an affect of like, I am here with you. We are on the journey to regulation. Allow time for that to happen. And if it's okay, I'm going to share an experience that a parent gave me in working through the 3 R's, where she said, Kasheena, when I pick up my kiddo, I have to roll up the windows. I'm like, okay. And then she said, you wouldn't even think why I have to roll up the windows. I'm like, why? Well, share that with me. Maybe it's insightful. She said to me, the wind. I'm like, okay, what about the wind? The wind is dysregulating to my kiddo's nervous system. So even if the wind blows, he becomes more dysregulated. It really does not help or support his rejuvenation, regulation journey. So it may seem simple sometimes, but we really have to start to think of what helps in that moment, in those early moments of transitioning, bridging that gap from school to home. Be empathetic. If some of you are coffee drinkers, if we don't have our coffee, our tea, we're not the most regulated, right? We're not as available. So be empathetic, understanding what that need is in the moment. Find, as a parent, find your inner calm arousal, so that when you're being with, that is the energy and affect that we're having. Afternoon pickup rush can be hectic. Our arousal levels are high, right? And I'm telling you, from the school's perspective, the energy in the afternoon time is also high, because we're looking for bags, we're packing up, we're getting everybody's things together. The teachers are heightened, the kids are heightened. So when children are transitioning to you, they're coming from a relatively heightened space. space, right? So if you bring some of your inner calm arousal and be with, it's going to really help them on that regulation journey. When you give some time and you notice it's coming along and we're coming back to a relatively calm, connected state, we can then start to think of reconnection, right? How do I reconnect? Think about those things that still help to support that calm, alerting affect, but we're looking also to connect so we can start to verbally engage, physically engage, share ideas, but without big demands, right? Because we're just beginning to reconnect. Think of passive co-regulation. So we're not doing a lot. We're still being with, but our kids are able to take more of us, take more of our affect, take more of our emotional energy. When that's established, then we're going into refocus. So our refocus is all those beautiful things that you wanted to do at first, asking questions, sharing ideas, going to the park, doing homework, exploring wonderful things about our day, even going to therapy. And I know it's a hard one, but that's the time we can then refocus, because the transition from school to some of our therapy sessions, that can also be more sensory demands. So we want to consider the refocusing part even in the context of our therapy sessions, which are really meaningful and supportive and beneficial, but they also require more spoons from our kiddos. So I hope this journey of reconnecting and bridging that gap from school to home, refocused in the creating of your 3 Rs was really meaningful to you, because it's something I really enjoy sharing with parents and watching them create, because everybody's 3 Rs look different because every child is unique and requires a different type of support journey. That is something that I enjoy sharing. So thank you all for joining us. I really enjoy sharing with you some of the insights from a teacher's perspective in terms of bridging the gap from school to home, and I hope it was really meaningful.
Thank you so much, Kasheena.
You're welcome.
Until next time, here's to choosing play and experiencing joy every day. Thank you for listening. This episode of We Chose Play was made possible with the generous financial support of Affect Autism's members and of the International Council on Development and Learning, ICDL.com. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone, like and subscribe, sign up for the newsletter at affectautism.com, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram. Find out more at affectautism.com. My new book is now available for purchase at your preferred online bookseller, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and others. We Chose Play, Raising an Autistic Child to Thrive and Feel Understood. Learn more at affectautism.com/we chose play, all one word.